Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 9 of the 2018 Candidates Tournament. Things are heating up in Berlin as we are getting closer to the finish line. Round 9 was played on Tuesday, March 20th, and these were the games. Wesley So against Alexander Grishuk, Fabiano Caruana, the tournament leader, against Ding Liren, Levon Aronian against Shahryar Mamedyarov, and Sergei Karjakin against Vladimir Kramnik. And it is that last game that we're going to look at. Both players are on -1, and this is really their last chance. They have to win this game to stay in the running for the top spot in this tournament, because only the first place counts in this tournament. These are the players, Karjakin on the left, Kramnik on the right during their game. Let's have a look at it. Karjakin opens c4, e6 from Kramnik, knight c3, d5, d4, we have a queen's gambit after knight f6, and Karjakin plays the exchange variation, c takes d5. A popular move here is to take back with the pawn, but taking with the knight is also possible. Now white can capture the center with e4, kicking the knight, knight takes, b takes, and black immediately attacks white's beautiful center with c5. This is all theory. Rook b1, bishop e7, knight f3, castling, and here comes a move that Karjakin prepared with his team in the training camp before the Candidates Tournament, h4. Karjakin explained after the game that this was indeed prepared, and he also said something very interesting. He said the engine does not show this move, and that of course increases the surprise value of this idea. Kramnik must have prepared his opening, and if the engine does not show h4 here, he will probably not have looked at it. He took on d4, c takes d4, knight c6 developing, and h5. That was Karjakin's idea. Here in preparation, Karjakin had expected to move h6, and he said there is a lot of lines, but Kramnik went for f5. Karjakin called this an interesting move, but I don't think it is good. And he also said that if this had been, for example, round 3, then he didn't think that Kramnik would have played this move. Kramnik really fights for his last chance here. He did not want a slow game. Karjakin looked at e5, but then he thought that black would play b6, and then bishop b7, and get some sort of a blockade on the d5 square, and he did not want to allow that. So after f5 he did not play e5, he took the pawn. Kramnik gave a check to win the pawn back, bishop d2, and he took back with the queen. Now black threatens to take on d4 with the knight. Knight takes d4 as a threat, because you cannot take back, because then you will be checkmated on f2, because the rook is also covering that square on the open f file. And Karjakin found a nice move, bishop c3, preventing knight takes d4 and preparing bishop d3 as he explained. Here Karjakin gave a variation. He showed queen g4, and then white still just plays bishop e2, because he doesn't have to be afraid of queen takes g2, because of rook g1, queen h3, and a very nice move d5, winning a piece. It's attacking the knight, and there is two pieces looking at g7, and after a move like knight d8, rook takes g7, black will already get checkmated here. Nice variation. So after bishop c3, queen g4 is not a good idea, and Kramnik played h6. Bishop d3 as planned, hitting the queen. Now the queen went to g4, and Karjakin played king f1, protecting the g2 pawn. And here comes quite a move from Kramnik. He played e5. Karjakin said, this move doesn't work, but I understand why he made it. He did not want to wait till I set up an attack with queen c2, rook e1, and rook h3. So Kramnik went all in, as Karjakin described it. After e5, Karjakin played d5, and here knight d4 does not work. Another nice variation, because Karjakin takes on e5, and then you could say black has queen f4, threatening checkmate as we saw before, and threatening the knight. But then white plays bishop takes d4, covering the checkmate, protecting the knight, and you cannot take that bishop because of a discovered check. Queen, bishop h7 check, and you're going to lose your queen. Another nice variation that Karjakin had seen here. So after d5, knight d4 does not work, as we just saw. Kramnik played e4, forking two pieces and ignoring the attack on his knights. Karjakin took on c6, and now you have to be careful, you cannot take on d3, because then c takes b7 wins for white. It's a fork. That pawn is protected by the rook. So after d takes c6, Kramnik took on f3. Now white does not have time to take on b7 because black will take on g2. Karjakin took on f3, and here he said he had expected queen takes f3, and then the queens get swapped, rook takes back, and king e2, attacking the rook and also still attacking b7. And black has to give an exchange here. Rook takes d3, king takes, bishop f5 check, the variation continues, king e2, and now you cannot take on b1 because of c takes b7, rook b8, rook takes b1, which is very good for white. So after king e2, you cannot take the rook, you have to take on c6, but this is also very unpleasant for black, and that's why Kramnik did not go for it, Karjakin suspects. So after g takes f3, instead of taking with the queen, Kramnik took with the rook. Here Karjakin played bishop e2, which he called a more simple option, and he thought that c takes b7 instead was too complicated to play over the board. He showed this variation, bishop takes b7, queen b3 check, king in a corner, white takes on b7, rook af8, and then queen e4 has to be played. After rook takes f2, king e1. Winning for white. I think Karjakin was told this variation after the game before he went to the press conference, and he said this is too complicated to play over the board, and he chose a more easy to play option, which was bishop e2 on the 20th move instead of c takes b7. Here Karjakin showed that rook h3 does not work. It looks nice because if you take the queen, then there is rook takes h1 check, king g2, and rook takes d1, bishop takes d1, and b takes c6, and this is okay for black. But after rook h3, instead of taking the queen, there is rook g1, and queen f4, queen d5 check wins for white. So rook h3 was not possible, and Kramnik decided to sacrifice a rook here after bishop e2. He took on f2 with check, sacrificing a full rook. Karjakin took it, bishop c5 check, king f1. White is a rook up, but black is going to attack the white king with all his four pieces, and of course the white king is in open space, does not have any pawn protection. Kramnik played queen f4 check here. He could have played queen g3 as well with a checkmate threat on f2, but after queen d5 check, white wins. So queen f4 check was played, bishop f3, and b takes c6. White is rook up, but Karjakin said, in fact, it was not so easy. Black has ideas with queen g3, bishop a6, or bishop g4, and then rook f8. And it wasn't easy at all, actually, Karjakin said. But he found the best move in this position, according to the engine, the only move that wins, and that was bishop e1. Karjakin said, I was happy I found this move. It was not so easy to find as I wanted to attack g7. Of course, what he wanted is keep that bishop there, look at g7, and hope to get a second piece to look at g7. But then I realized that I'm a rook up and I need to defend my position. Bishop e1, great move. Bishop e6 from Kramnik. And now he can bring this rook into play as well. Bishop h4. With the idea of king g2, as Karjakin explained. What is important here is that white is covering the g5 and d8 squares with his bishop. That's why the bishop went there. There's another option. Let's get rid of the yellow lines first. Karjakin showed the move king g2 straight away. But then there is queen g5 check, bishop g3 and rook d8 with the threat of rook d2 protected by the queen, and this is very, very strong for black. So what white needs to do is sacrifice the queen. Queen takes d8 check, queen takes, rook b8, bishop interposes, bishop g4, crazy variation this, queen d5 check, king h2, bishop d6, rook takes c8, check, king h7, and Karjakin said white must be winning, but my pieces are very badly placed, and this was not clear to me. He did not like those pieces, they don't coordinate very well. Crazy line, and Karjakin just showed this variation as if it was the most normal thing in the world to see this crazy line. For him it is. So where were we? We had bishop e6, and then instead of king g2 there was bishop h4 played by Karjakin. Rook f8, bringing that rook into the attack. King g2, king h8, which Karjakin called a brilliant move, a way out of any checks which could be double attacks, just handing over the move to white. And again Karjakin said it was not easy at all, but he was happy finding rook c1. He also showed bishop g3, looks like a logical move, but then queen g5, and black has the threat of rook takes f3 and then bishop d5. So Karjakin found rook c1 and was happy with that defensive move. Rook f5 from Kramnik. Rook c3 again played after quite a long think. Here Karjakin said he was sure that Kramnik would play bishop d4 attacking the rook, and then he showed this variation, rook takes c6, rook g5 check, and you can take that. The queen takes back with check, king f1, and a very nice move, bishop h3 check. You cannot take that bishop because you get checkmated. Queen g1 check, king e2, queen e3 check, king f1, and checkmate. So after bishop h3 check you have to go to e1, and black is going to chase the white king. Queen c3 check, king d2, queen f4 check, king c2, bishop f5 check, king b3, queen e3 check, and the king ends on a4. Karjakin was laughing. He said this is probably winning for white, but not so easy at all with the king in open space. But after rook c3, Kramnik did not play bishop d4. He played rook d5, attacking the queen and sacrificing more material because that rook was taken. Bishop takes d5 check. Of course, the bishop on f3 was an important defender. That's why Kramnik gave more material. But he's now, as Judith Polgar said, a rook and a half up. Karjakin is a rook up and also an exchange. Rook and a half, quite funny. Rook f3 was played by Karjakin. Queen g4 check, bishop g3 and bishop d6. Rook h3 from Karjakin, and he said here with two rooks against one bishop, white should be able to win. Of course, his pieces are pinned for the moment. This bishop is pinned, and this rook is pinned, and this rook is needed to cover the g3 square. Black cannot keep the status quo of all those pinned pieces. He cannot play bishop c7 as a waiting move, because then white will win with queen f1. And if you keep the status quo, then now king h2 is possible, giving some material back. Bishop takes f3, bishop takes d6, and white will win this. After rook h3, Kramnik decided on bishop e7, queen e2, bishop e4, queen f2, and a5. Karjakin responded with a4, and he explained why he made that move. He said, I play a4 because of this line. If I go rook h1 immediately, then the line goes as follows. Bishop c5 attacking the queen, rook h4 counter attacking the black queen, queen takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, king takes, bishop takes f3, king takes f3, g6 and king e4. And he was not sure if he would be able to win this. So that is the reason that Karjakin played the pawn up to a4 to get it closer to the promotion square, to make this endgame easier to win for white. After showing this variation, Karjakin got an applause from the journalists and spectators in the press conference. So a4 was played, and now we know why. c5 from Kramnik. He's slowly but surely running out of resources. Rook h1 as planned, bishop f6, rook e1, bishop c6, rook e3, c4, queen e2. Both players were in time trouble. This is move 39. Kramnik took on h5. Karjakin made his last move for the time control, queen takes c4, and bishop d7 from Kramnik. Karjakin had now all the time in the world and many moves win. He played rook d3 and Kramnik resigned. White has consolidated his position and is just too much material up. Big win from Karjakin, who keeps his hopes alive, and Kramnik, who started with 2.5 out of 3, has now 3.5 out of 9. In the last 6 rounds, Kramnik has only managed 2 draws. This is a happy Sergei Karjakin, showing all these wonderful variations in a press conference. And these are the results of round 9. So and Grishuk played a very quick draw. Caruana and Ding played a very long draw. Caruana was winning, but Ding made his 9th draw by defending really well. Aronian and Mamedyarov also made a draw, and we saw Karjakin against Kramnik. Which means that these are the standings after 9 rounds. Caruana still half a point ahead of Mamedyarov, Grishuk half a point behind him, and Karjakin and Ding both on 50%. Kramnik, Aronian and So all on 3.5. They still have a theoretical chance to win a tournament, but practically it's very unlikely. Wednesday is a rest day, and round 10 will be played on Thursday, March 22nd. And we'll see Grishuk against Karjakin, Kramnik, Aronian, Mamedyarov, Caruana, that is the big one, number 2 against number 1 in the standings, and Ding Liren against Wesley So. Hope you enjoyed this video on round 9. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up and please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. Please leave a comment, I will read them all and I will reply to them all. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.